The wind screamed past Sophia's ears as she plummeted toward the earth, her husband's face growing smaller in the helicopter door above her. The last thing she saw was Richard's cold smile, not the loving expression of a man who had just lost his wife in a tragic accident, but the calculated look of someone who had just committed murder. 3 seconds earlier, she had been leaning out of the helicopter, marveling at the beautiful landscape below. Richard had suggested this romantic helicopter ride for their 5th wedding anniversary, and she had been so touched by the gesture. He rarely did anything romantic anymore, always buried in his work at the insurance company where he was a senior claims adjuster. "Look down there, honey," he had said, his voice barely audible over the helicopter's rotor blades. "See how small everything looks from up here?" She had smiled and leaned forward, pressing her face against the cool glass. That's when she felt his hands on her back, not gentle, not loving, but firm and deliberate. The safety harness that should have been securing her had been loosened, she realized too late. The door that should have been locked was suddenly open. "Richard, what are you?" But the words were lost in the wind as his hands pushed hard against her shoulders, sending her tumbling into the vast emptiness below. For a moment, she couldn't process what was happening. This had to be an accident. Her husband of 5 years couldn't do this to her. As she fell, fragments of the past few months flashed through her mind. Richard's sudden interest in life insurance policies. His insistence that they both increase their coverage for protection. The way he had been working late more often, the smell of perfume that wasn't hers lingering on his clothes. The credit card bills showing expensive dinners at restaurants they had never been to together. The ground rushed up to meet her, and Sophia closed her eyes, preparing for the end. She thought about her childhood, growing up in Atlanta with her grandmother who had raised her after her parents died. She thought about her job as a nurse, all the patients she had helped, all the lives she had touched. She thought about the business degree she had earned through night school, the dream she had put on hold when she married Richard. But instead of the hard ground, she felt the sharp branches of a massive oak tree breaking her fall. Pain shot through her body as she crashed through the canopy, each branch slowing her descent. Her left arm snapped with a sickening crack, and she felt her ribs break as she hit a thick branch. Blood ran down her face from cuts made by the smaller branches, but she was alive. She landed hard in a pile of leaves at the base of the tree, every bone in her body screaming in pain. Above her, she could hear the helicopter circling, probably making sure she was dead. She forced herself to remain still, to play dead, even though every instinct told her to scream for help. The helicopter circled 3 more times before flying away. Only then did Sophia allow herself to move, to take inventory of her injuries. Her left arm was definitely broken, she had several broken ribs, and she was bleeding from dozens of cuts. But she was alive, and more importantly, she was angry. She managed to crawl to the edge of the small clearing where she had landed. In the distance, she could see a farmhouse with smoke coming from the chimney. Using her good arm, she began dragging herself toward it, leaving a trail of blood behind her. Each movement sent waves of pain through her body, but she refused to give up. It took her 2 hours to reach the farmhouse. The elderly couple who lived there, the Johnsons, found her collapsed on their porch. They called 911 immediately, and within minutes, an ambulance was rushing her to the nearest hospital. As the paramedics worked on her, Sophia made a decision. She wouldn't tell anyone the truth about what had happened, not yet. She would let Richard think his plan had worked, let him believe she was dead. And then, when he least expected it, she would destroy him. The last thing she remembered before losing consciousness was the paramedic asking her what had happened. "Accident?" she whispered through cracked lips. "Helicopter accident." But it wasn't an accident, and Richard was about to learn that some falls don't kill you, they just make you stronger. Sophia woke up in the hospital 3 days later to find a nurse checking her for. The woman's name tag read, Patricia, and she had kind eyes that reminded Sophia of her grandmother. "Well, hello there, miracle girl," Patricia said with a warm smile. "You gave us quite a scare. The doctors weren't sure you were going to make it." Sophia tried to speak, but her throat was raw and dry. Patricia quickly brought her a cup of water with a straw, helping her take small sips. The cool liquid felt like heaven against her parched throat. "What happened to me?" Sophia asked, though she remembered everything with painful clarity. "Helicopter crash," Patricia said, consulting her chart. "You fell from about 200 feet according to the rescue team. It's a miracle you survived. That old oak tree saved your life, the branches broke your fall just enough." Sophia nodded slowly, processing the information. "My husband, is he? He's fine, honey. Been here every day since they brought you in. The poor man is beside himself with grief and worry. He's down in the cafeteria right now, but I can call him if you'd like. No, Sophia said quickly. Not yet. I need some time to remember everything. Patricia nodded understandingly. You have a severe concussion, so some confusion is normal. Take your time. Your husband mentioned that you two were on a romantic helicopter ride for your anniversary when something went wrong with the aircraft. He said you were thrown from the helicopter when it hit some turbulence. Sophia's jaw tightened. So that was going to be his story. She had been thrown from the helicopter due to mechanical failure or turbulence. Not pushed by her loving husband who wanted to cash in on her life insurance policy. The pilot, she asked. What happened to him? He's in the ICU, but he's stable. Managed to crash land the helicopter in a field about a mile from where you fell. He's been asking about you actually. Keeps saying he doesn't understand what happened, that everything was working fine one moment and then. Patricia trailed off, seeming to realize she might be saying too much. Well, I'm sure the investigators will figure it all out. The important thing is that you're alive and recovering. After Patricia left, Sophia stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. The pilot was alive, which meant there was a witness to what had really happened. But would he have seen Richard push her? The helicopter had been small, with the pilot facing forward. He might not have seen anything. She needed to be careful. If Richard suspected she knew the truth, he might try to finish what he started. For now, she would play the part of the confused, grateful wife who had survived a terrible accident. When Richard finally came to visit that evening, Sophia was ready for him. She had practiced her expression in the reflection of the window, confused, loving, slightly scared. She had thought about what she would say, how she would act. "Oh, Richard," she said weakly when he entered the room. "I was so scared. I thought I was going to die." Richard's face was a mask of concern, but Sophia could see something else in his eyes: disappointment? Frustration? He had been expecting to find her dead, and instead she was very much alive. "Thank God you're okay," he said, moving to her bedside and taking her good hand. "I was so worried. When I saw you fall from the helicopter, I thought I had lost you forever." His hand felt cold against hers, and she had to fight the urge to pull away. This was the same hand that had pushed her to what should have been her death. "I don't remember much," she lied. "Just falling and then waking up here. The nurse said there was some kind of mechanical problem with the helicopter." "That's what the investigators think," Richard said smoothly. "The pilot is still unconscious, so we don't know for sure what happened. But the important thing is that you're alive and going to be okay." They talked for a few more minutes, with Richard playing the role of the devoted husband perfectly. He told her about how he had been beside himself with worry, how he had barely left the hospital since she was brought in. He mentioned that he had already contacted their insurance company about the accident, just to make sure all her medical bills would be covered. After he left, Sophia lay in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. She knew she couldn't stay here much longer. As soon as she was discharged, she would need to disappear before Richard realized she knew the truth about what he had done. She began making plans. She would need help, and she knew exactly who to call. Her best friend from nursing school, Nicole, who now worked as a private investigator in Miami. Nicole had always been suspicious of Richard, had warned Sophia that something seemed off about him. She would help. The next morning, Sophia asked Patricia for a private moment. "I need to make a phone call," she said. "But I don't want my husband to know about it. Can you help me?" Patricia looked concerned. "Is everything okay, honey? You seem troubled." "I just need to call an old friend," Sophia said. "Someone who can help me remember some things about the accident. I'm still so confused about what happened." Patricia nodded and brought her a phone. When she was sure she was alone, Sophia dialed Nicole's number. "Nicole, it's Sophia. I need your help, and I need you to trust me. Something terrible has happened, and I think my husband tried to kill me." Nicole arrived at the hospital the next day, disguised as a visiting nurse from another department. She was a tall woman with sharp features and an even sharper mind, qualities that made her an excellent private investigator. "I've been doing some digging since you called," Nicole said quietly as she pretended to check Sophia's vitals. "And girl, you're not going to like what I found." She handed Sophia a folder hidden inside a medical chart. "Richard took out a $2 million life insurance policy on you 6 months ago. He's been making payments from a separate account you don't know about." Sophia's heart sank, even though she had expected this. Seeing the proof in black and white made it real in a way that hurt worse than all her physical injuries combined. "There's more," Nicole continued. "He's been having an affair with his secretary, Amanda Williams. I have photos of them together at hotels, restaurants, even at your house when you were working late shifts at the hospital. The photos were like knife wounds to her heart. There was Richard, the man she had loved and trusted, kissing another woman in their bed. Amanda was younger than Sophia, with long blonde hair and a figure that came from expensive gym memberships. In the photos, Richard looked happier than Sophia had seen him in years. "How long?" Sophia asked. "At least 8 months, maybe longer. I talked to some people at his office. The affair is pretty much an open secret there. Everyone knows except you." Sophia felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough over Richard. Now it was time for action. "I need you to help me disappear," she said. "Let Richard think I died from my injuries. I want him to feel safe, secure in his new life with Amanda. And then I want to destroy him." Nicole smiled grimly. "I was hoping you'd say that. I've already started working on it. I have a contact who can help us fake your death, someone who works in the medical examiner's office. We can make it look like you died from internal injuries, complications from the fall." Over the next 2 days they worked out the details. Nicole would help Sophia escape from the hospital and disappear. They would stage her death to look like she had died suddenly from internal bleeding related to her injuries. Richard would be free to collect the insurance money and live his new life with Amanda. But while he was enjoying his newfound freedom, Sophia would be building her own new life and planning his destruction. "I want to know everything about him," Sophia told Nicole. "His work, his finances, his weaknesses. I want to know more about Richard than he knows about himself." Nicole nodded. "I'm already on it. Did you know he's been embezzling money from his company? Small amounts but regular. He's been using the money to pay for his dates with Amanda." This was news to Sophia. Richard had always been so careful with money, always lecturing her about budgeting and saving. To learn that he had been stealing from his employer was another betrayal. "His company is Hartwell Insurance, right?" Sophia asked. "Where he works as a senior claims adjuster?" "That's right. It's a mid-size company, family-owned. The owner, Mr. Hartwell, is getting close to retirement. Word is he's looking to sell the company in the next year or two." An idea began forming in Sophia's mind. "Find out everything you can about Hartwell Insurance. I want to know their finances, their client list, their vulnerabilities. If Richard thinks he's going to benefit from my death, he's about to learn how wrong he is." The night before her staged death, Sophia lay in her hospital bed, thinking about the life she was leaving behind. She had been Sophia Martinez, a nurse who had put her husband's dreams before her own. She had worked extra shifts to help pay for his business school, had put her own education on hold to support his career. But that woman was dead now, killed when Richard pushed her from that helicopter. The woman who would emerge from this hospital would be someone entirely different, someone with the resources and determination to make Richard pay for what he had done. Nicole returned with the final details of their plan. "Everything is set. Tomorrow morning, you'll officially die from complications related to your injuries. The funeral will be in 3 days. Richard has already started planning it. He's going with a closed casket, which makes our job easier. And after that? After that, you become Elena Rodriguez, a wealthy widow who made her fortune in real estate investments. I've been building your new identity for months, bank accounts, credit history, even a backstory about your late husband's business empire. You'll have enough money to do whatever you want." "Where did the money come from?" Nicole smiled. "Let's just say that over the years, I've helped a lot of wealthy women escape bad situations. Some of them were very grateful and wanted to help other women in similar circumstances. Think of it as a fund for women seeking justice." Sophia felt a surge of gratitude for her friend. "I don't know how to thank you. Just promise me you'll be careful," Nicole said. "Richard is dangerous. He tried to kill you once and he won't hesitate to try again if he discovers you're alive." "I'll be careful," Sophia promised. "But I won't be afraid. Not anymore." That night, as she prepared for her symbolic death, Sophia thought about the woman she had been and the woman she was about to become. The old Sophia had been trusting, loving, willing to sacrifice her own dreams for the man she loved. The new Sophia would be smart, calculating, and absolutely ruthless in her pursuit of justice. Richard had made a fatal mistake when he pushed her from that helicopter. He had awakened something in her that she didn't even know existed, a fierce desire for revenge that would consume her until she had destroyed him completely. Tomorrow Sophia Martinez would die. But Elena Rodriguez would be born, and she would be Richard's worst nightmare. The staged death went perfectly. At 6:47 a.m., Sophia Martinez was officially pronounced dead from internal bleeding caused by complications from her helicopter accident. The doctor who signed the death certificate was one of Nicole's contacts. a woman who had her own reasons for helping victims of domestic violence escape their abusers. From her hiding place in the hospital basement, Sophia watched through a small window as Richard arrived to identify her body. He played his part perfectly, collapsing in apparent grief when told that his wife had died during the night. The tears looked real, the devastation seemed genuine. If Sophia hadn't known better, she might have believed his performance herself. Nicole had arranged for everything. Within hours of the official death, Sophia was smuggled out of the hospital in a laundry cart. A car was waiting to take her to a safe house across town, where she would stay until after the funeral. The funeral was held 3 days later. From her position in a car parked across the street from the cemetery, Sophia watched as Richard stood beside her empty casket, accepting condolences from friends and co-workers. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit and had managed to look appropriately devastated. But Sophia noticed something else. Amanda was there, standing in the back of the crowd. She wasn't sitting with the family or receiving condolences as Richard's girlfriend. She was trying to be inconspicuous, but Sophia could see the way she watched Richard, the way her eyes followed his every movement. After the service, Sophia followed Richard home to the house they had shared for 5 years. Through the window, she watched him pour himself a drink and sit in his favorite chair. For exactly 10 minutes, he sat there with his head in his hands, looking like a man destroyed by grief. Then Amanda arrived. Sophia watched in disgust as Richard's mourning mask slipped away. He opened the door with a smile, pulled Amanda into his arms and kissed her passionately. They were celebrating. Her husband was celebrating her death. "I can't believe it worked," she heard Amanda say as they moved to the living room. "I was so scared something would go wrong." "I told you it would be fine," Richard replied. "The pilot didn't see anything, and even if he had, who's going to believe that I pushed my own wife out of a helicopter? It was the perfect accident." "When do we get the money?" Amanda asked. "I filed the insurance claim yesterday. They said it should be processed within 30 days, but given the circumstances, it might take a little longer. $2 million, baby. We're going to be rich." Sophia felt sick listening to them talk about her death like it was a business transaction. But she forced herself to keep watching, to keep listening. She needed to know everything about their plans. "So what now?" Amanda asked. "Do we wait a while before we start dating publicly?" "We'll give it a few months," Richard said. "Make it look like we found comfort in each other during our grief. You were her friend after all." Amanda laughed. "I was never her friend. I couldn't stand her. She was so good. So perfect. Always volunteering at the hospital, always putting others first. Made me sick." "Well, she's gone now," Richard said. "And soon we'll have enough money to start our new life together. I was thinking we could move somewhere warm, maybe Florida or California. Start fresh." Sophia had heard enough. She slipped away from the window and returned to her car, her mind racing with plans. Richard and Amanda thought they had won, but their victory was about to become their downfall. Over the next few weeks, Sophia settled into her new identity as Elena Rodriguez. Nicole had done an incredible job creating her backstory. Elena was a 32-year-old widow whose husband had died in a car accident 2 years earlier, leaving her with a substantial inheritance from his construction business. She had moved to the city to start fresh and was looking for investment opportunities. The apartment Nicole had found for her was in an upscale neighborhood across town, close enough to keep an eye on Richard, but far enough away to avoid accidental encounters. It was a beautiful space with floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture that looked nothing like the cozy home she had shared with Richard. Sophia spent her days learning everything she could about Richard's life and work. She studied Hartwell Insurance Company until she knew more about their business than most of their employees. She researched Richard's colleagues, his clients, his daily routines. She even learned about his hobbies and interests, things she had never paid attention to during their marriage. The transformation wasn't just mental. Sophia had always been beautiful, but now she made herself stunning. She hired a personal trainer to help her regain her strength after the accident. She bought a new wardrobe of expensive, sophisticated clothes. She had her hair cut and styled in a way that made her look completely different from the woman Richard had married. Most importantly, she studied business. She had always been intelligent, but now she channeled that intelligence into learning about investments, acquisitions, and corporate strategy. She read books, took online courses, and even hired a business consultant to help her understand the intricacies of buying and selling companies. 6 weeks after her death, Sophia was ready to begin her revenge. She had built a new life, created a new identity, and armed herself with the knowledge and resources she would need to destroy Richard completely. The plan was simple in concept but complex in execution. She would approach Hartwell Insurance as a potential investor, someone interested in acquiring the company when old Mr. Hartwell decided to retire. She would gain Richard's trust, learn about his embezzlement, and then use that information to destroy him personally and professionally. But first she wanted to see him again. She wanted to look into his eyes and see if there was any part of the man she had loved still there, any trace of guilt or remorse for what he had done. She chose a restaurant downtown where Richard often took clients for lunch. She made a reservation for the same time she knew he would be there, and she waited. When Richard walked in with a potential client, Sophia felt her heart skip a beat. He looked good, rested, happy, prosperous. The stress lines that had been around his eyes during their marriage were gone. Killing Her had apparently agreed with him. She watched him throughout his lunch, noting the way he laughed, the way he gestured, the confidence in his voice. This was not a man haunted by guilt. This was a man who had gotten exactly what he wanted. When Richard went to the restroom, Sophia made her move. She walked past his table, deliberately dropping her purse near his chair. When he returned, she was crouched down, collecting her scattered belongings. "Here, let me help you," Richard said, kneeling down to help her gather her things. For a moment they were face to face, less than 2 feet apart. Sophia looked directly into his eyes, searching for any sign of recognition. But Richard saw only a beautiful stranger who needed assistance. "Thank you so much," she said, letting him help her to her feet. "I'm so clumsy sometimes." "No problem at all," Richard said with a smile. Beautiful women should never have to pick up their own purses. It was a line he had used on her when they first met, and hearing it again made Sophia's stomach turn. But she smiled back, playing the part of the charmed stranger. "I'm Elena Rodriguez," she said, extending her hand. "Richard Martinez," he replied, shaking her hand. "Nice to meet you, Elena." And with that simple exchange, Sophia's revenge began. Elena Rodriguez lived in a world that Sofia Martinez had never known. She owned a penthouse apartment with a view of the city skyline, drove a Mercedes-Benz, and wore designer clothes that cost more than Sofia used to make in a month. But the most important difference was the power that came from having money and being underestimated. Nicole had done exceptional work creating Elena's background. She was a successful real estate investor who had built a portfolio of properties across 3 states. Her husband, Miguel Rodriguez, had been a successful construction contractor who died in a car accident, leaving her with a substantial inheritance and a keen interest in business ventures. "The key to a good cover story is keeping it simple," Nicole had explained. "Don't get too creative with the details. The less you have to remember, the less chance there is of making a mistake." Elena's first few weeks in her new life were spent learning to be wealthy. She hired a financial advisor to help her manage her investments, joined an exclusive gym where she could network with other successful professionals, and even took lessons in wine tasting and art appreciation. She needed to be able to move convincingly in the circles where she would encounter Richard. The most difficult part was learning to be ruthless. Sophia had always been a people pleaser, someone who put others' needs before her own. Elena needed to be different, calculating, strategic, willing to do whatever it took to achieve her goals. Her first test came when she decided to approach Hartwell Insurance Company. She had learned that the company was indeed looking for an investor, someone who could help them expand their operations and eventually take over when Mr. Hartwell retired. It was the perfect opportunity to get close to Richard. She spent 2 weeks preparing for her initial meeting with Mr. Hartwell. She studied the insurance industry, learned about the company's competitors, and developed a comprehensive business plan for how she could help them grow. When she walked into the Hartwell offices, she was ready. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Mr. Hartwell said, rising from his desk to shake her hand. "Thank you for coming in. I've heard some interesting things about your investment portfolio." Elena smiled confidently. "I'm always looking for opportunities to work with well-established companies that have good leadership and growth potential. From what I've researched, Hartwell Insurance fits that description perfectly." The meeting went better than she had hoped. Mr. Hartwell was impressed by her business acumen and her willingness to invest significant capital in the company. They discussed the possibility of her buying a stake in the business, with the option to acquire the entire company when he was ready to retire. "I'd like you to meet some of our key employees," Mr. Hartwell said. "Get a feel for the team you'd be working with. We have some excellent people here, including our senior claims adjuster, Richard Martinez. He's been with us for 7 years and really knows the business." Elena felt her pulse quicken, but she kept her expression neutral. "I'd be happy to meet your team. Understanding the human resources is crucial to any successful investment." They scheduled a meeting for the following week. Elena would come in for a full day, meeting with department heads and getting a comprehensive overview of the company's operations. Richard would be one of the people she'd meet with, though he wouldn't know she was coming. The night before the meeting, Elena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying makeup with steady hands. She had practiced this moment dozens of times, but now that it was here, she felt a mixture of excitement and terror. Tomorrow she would see Richard again, and this time she would be in control. She chose her outfit carefully, a navy blue business suit that was expensive but not flashy, with a silk blouse and pearl earrings. She wanted to look successful and sophisticated, but not so glamorous that she would be memorable for the wrong reasons. The day of the meeting, Elena arrived at Hartwell Insurance at 9 a.m. sharp. Mr. Hartwell greeted her personally and began introducing her to his staff. She met the accounting manager, the customer service supervisor, and the IT director. Each introduction was professional and brief, but Elena paid attention to every detail, filing away information that might be useful later. "And this is our senior claims adjuster, Richard Martinez," Mr. Hartwell said as they entered Richard's office. "Richard, I'd like you to meet Elena Rodriguez. She's considering investing in our company." Richard looked up from his desk, and for a moment, Elena saw something flicker in his eyes, a flash of recognition that was quickly replaced by confusion. He stood up and extended his hand, his professional smile firmly in place. "Mrs. Rodriguez, it's a pleasure to meet you," he said. "I think we may have met before, actually. At Romano's restaurant a few weeks ago? You dropped your purse?" Elena smiled and shook his hand, noting how soft his palms were. Richard had always been proud of his soft hands, claiming they showed he was a professional, not a laborer. "Yes, I remember. Thank you again for your help that day. It's funny how small the world can be." "Indeed it is," Richard replied. "Please have a seat. Mr. Hartwell tells me you're interested in investing in our company. That's exciting news." For the next hour, Elena listened as Richard explained the claims adjustment process, the company's success rate in handling claims, and his role in managing the department. He was articulate and knowledgeable, and Elena could see why Mr. Hartwell valued him. But she also noticed things that Mr. Hartwell probably didn't see: the way Richard's eyes lingered on her figure, the slightly flirtatious tone he used when he thought his boss wasn't listening. Most importantly, she noticed his computer screen. When Richard had stood up to greet her, she had caught a glimpse of what he was working on, a spreadsheet that didn't look like official company business. The numbers and dates suggested it might be related to his embezzlement scheme. "Richard has been instrumental in streamlining our claims process," Mr. Hartwell said. "He's saved us thousands of dollars in fraudulent claims over the years." "That's impressive," Elena said, looking directly at Richard. "I imagine it takes a special kind of person to detect fraud. You must have a good eye for people who aren't what they seem." Richard's smile faltered slightly. "Well, you learn to spot the signs. People who are trying to deceive you usually give themselves away eventually." "How true," Elena replied. "I've found that the biggest frauds are often the ones who seem most trustworthy on the surface." The meeting continued for another few minutes, but Elena could see that Richard was becoming uncomfortable. He kept glancing at her as if trying to figure out why she seemed familiar. She decided it was time to leave before he started asking too many questions. "Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Martinez," she said, standing up. "I look forward to working with you in the future." "The pleasure was all mine," Richard replied, standing as well. "I hope we'll be seeing more of you around here." "Oh, I'm sure you will," Elena said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm very interested in getting to know this company better. All aspects of it." As she left Richard's office, Elena felt a surge of satisfaction. The first phase of her plan was complete. She had successfully inserted herself into Richard's professional life, and he had no idea who she really was. Now the real work could begin. Over the next few weeks, Elena would become a regular presence at Hartwell Insurance. She would gain Richard's trust, learn about his embezzlement scheme, and position herself to destroy everything he had built on the foundation of her supposed death. Richard Martinez had no idea that his victim had returned, and she was coming for everything he held dear. Elena's investment in Hartwell Insurance was approved within 2 weeks. She purchased a 30% stake in the company, making her the second largest shareholder behind Mr. Hartwell himself. The deal gave her an office in the building and a legitimate reason to be there every day, observing Richard and gathering information. Her office was strategically located down the hall from Richard's, giving her a perfect view of his comings and goings. She arrived early and stayed late, establishing herself as a dedicated investor who was hands-on with her business ventures. "I like to understand every aspect of my investments," she explained to Mr. Hartwell when he commented on her long hours. The devil is in the details, as they say. Richard seemed both intrigued and unsettled by her presence. She caught him staring at her during meetings, and he often found excuses to stop by her office. She could see he was attracted to her, but there was something else, a nagging feeling that he couldn't quite shake. "Have we met somewhere before?" he asked one afternoon, standing in her doorway with a cup of coffee. "I mean, besides that day at the restaurant. You seem so familiar." Elena looked up from her computer, her expression carefully neutral. "I don't think so. I have one of those faces, I suppose. People often think they know me." "Maybe," Richard said, but he didn't look convinced. "Where are you from originally?" "Chicago," she lied smoothly. "I lived there until my husband died. Then I moved here to start fresh." "I'm sorry for your loss," Richard said, though his expression suggested he was more interested in her availability than her grief. "How long ago did you lose him?" 2 years, Elena replied. "Cancer. It was a long battle." Richard's expression softened slightly, and Elena could see him calculating whether enough time had passed for her to be ready for a new relationship. She had to resist the urge to laugh at his transparency. "That must have been difficult," he said. "But you seem to be doing well for yourself now." "I've learned to focus on building something positive from the pain," Elena said. "Sometimes the worst experiences in life can lead to the best opportunities." Over the following weeks, Elena began to implement the second phase of her plan. She used her position at the company to gain access to financial records, employee files, and operational data. What she found was even worse than she had expected. Richard's embezzlement wasn't limited to small amounts skimmed from petty cash. He had been systematically stealing from the company for over 2 years, manipulating claims records and pocketing settlement money that should have gone to clients. The total amount was close to $200,000. But Elena also discovered something else: Richard wasn't the only one involved. Amanda, who worked as his secretary, had been helping him by falsifying documents and covering his tracks. They had been stealing from the company while planning to kill Elena for her insurance money. Elena made copies of all the evidence, storing it in a secure location. She wasn't ready to expose Richard yet. First, she wanted to destroy his personal life the same way he had tried to destroy hers. She began by learning everything she could about his relationship with Amanda. Through careful observation and strategic questioning of other employees, she discovered that the affair had been going on for nearly a year before her death. Richard had been promising Amanda that he would leave his wife, but he had been reluctant to give up the financial security of his marriage. Elena also learned that Amanda was not the sweet, innocent secretary she pretended to be. She was ambitious and manipulative, and she had been pressuring Richard to get rid of his wife so they could be together openly. In many ways, Amanda had been the driving force behind the murder plot. This knowledge gave Elena an idea for the next phase of her revenge. She would drive a wedge between Richard and Amanda, making them turn against each other. When people were desperate and scared, they made mistakes, and Elena wanted Richard to make as many mistakes as possible. She started by anonymously sending Amanda photographs of Richard having lunch with other women business associates, clients, anyone who could be misinterpreted as a romantic interest. The photos were innocent, but Elena made sure they looked suspicious by cropping out context and focusing on moments of laughter or casual touch. Within a week, Amanda was confronting Richard about his supposed infidelity. Elena watched from her office as Amanda stormed into Richard's office, her voice raised in anger. "Who is she?" Amanda demanded. "Don't lie to me, Richard. I have pictures." "What are you talking about?" Richard replied, but Elena could see the confusion and frustration on his face. "What pictures?" "The ones of you with that brunette at Luigi's last Tuesday. And the blonde at the coffee shop on Thursday. How many women are you seeing?" Elena had to bite her lip to keep from smiling. The brunette was a claims adjuster from another company, and the blonde was a client discussing her husband's life insurance policy. But Amanda's jealousy was making her see threats where none existed. The fight continued for several minutes, with Amanda accusing Richard of using her to get rid of his wife and then planning to discard her as well. Richard tried to explain that the women in the photos were business associates, but Amanda was too angry to listen. "I gave up everything for you," Amanda screamed. "I helped you kill your wife, and this is how you repay me?" Elena's blood ran cold. Even though she had known Amanda was involved, hearing her admit it so casually was shocking. But she forced herself to keep listening, to keep gathering evidence. "Keep your voice down," Richard hissed. "Do you want everyone to hear you?" "I don't care anymore," Amanda shot back. "Maybe I should tell everyone what really happened to your precious wife. Maybe they'd be interested to know that she didn't fall out of that helicopter by accident. This was exactly what Elena had hoped for. She activated the recording app on her phone, capturing every word of the argument. Richard and Amanda were so focused on each other that they didn't notice their conversation was being overheard. "You're being paranoid," Richard said, but Elena could see the fear in his eyes. "Those photos don't mean anything. Someone is trying to cause trouble between us." "Someone like who?" Amanda demanded. "Who would want to break us up?" Elena smiled to herself. Amanda was asking the right question, but she would never guess the answer. The dead wife she had helped murder was alive and well, and she was systematically destroying their relationship from the inside. The fight ended with Amanda storming out of the office, but Elena could see that the damage was done. Trust, once broken, was almost impossible to repair. Richard and Amanda would never feel secure in their relationship again, and that insecurity would make them both vulnerable to manipulation. Over the next few days, Elena continued her campaign of psychological warfare. She sent more anonymous photos, made anonymous phone calls to Amanda suggesting that Richard was planning to leave her, and even had flowers delivered to Richard's office with a card signed Love, M, a meaningless initial that Amanda would spend hours trying to decipher. The stress was beginning to show on both of them. Richard looked tired and distracted at work, and Amanda was becoming increasingly paranoid and aggressive. They were suspicious of each other, suspicious of their co-workers, and suspicious of every woman who came into contact with Richard. Elena found herself enjoying the chaos she was creating. For months, she had been the victim, the one who had been betrayed and hurt. Now she was the one in control, pulling the strings and watching her enemies destroy themselves. But she wasn't finished yet. The destruction of Richard and Amanda's relationship was just the beginning. Next, she would destroy Richard's professional reputation and his financial security. By the time she was finished, he would have nothing left: no love, no money, no career, and no future. Richard Martinez had tried to kill her for money, but Elena Rodriguez was going to kill him slowly, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the man who had pushed her from that helicopter. Elena's plan to destroy Richard's professional life required patience and precision. She had spent weeks studying the company's operations, learning the names of every client, every procedure, every weakness in their system. Now she was ready to use that knowledge against him. The first step was to position herself as Richard's ally. She began scheduling regular meetings with him, ostensibly to learn more about the claims department for her investment portfolio. During these meetings, she was charming and attentive, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest in his work. "You really know this business," she told him during one of their sessions. "I'm impressed by how you've streamlined the claims process. It's clear why Mr. Hartwell values you so highly." Richard preened under her praise, his ego responding exactly as Elena had expected. "I've worked hard to build this department," he said. "When I started here, the claims process was a mess. I've saved this company hundreds of thousands of dollars." "I can see that," Elena replied. "In fact, I've been thinking about expanding the claims department once I increase my stake in the company. Someone with your experience would be invaluable in that expansion." The suggestion that Elena might increase her investment and that Richard might benefit from it was exactly what she had hoped would happen. Richard's eyes lit up with greed and ambition. "I'd be very interested in discussing that," he said. "I have a lot of ideas about how we could grow the business." Over the following weeks, Elena cultivated Richard's trust by sharing her supposed business plans with him. She talked about expanding into new markets, hiring additional staff, and increasing the company's revenue. Richard saw dollar signs and the possibility of a promotion, maybe even a partnership. Meanwhile, Elena continued her campaign against Amanda. She escalated her psychological warfare by having expensive gifts delivered to Richard's office: flowers, chocolates, even a bottle of champagne with a note that read, "Looking forward to our future together." Amanda intercepted most of these deliveries, and each one made her more suspicious and angry. The tension between Richard and Amanda was affecting their work performance. They were arguing more frequently, and other employees were beginning to notice. Elena made sure to document every incident, every raised voice, every suspicious glance. She also began to subtly sabotage Richard's work. Using her access to company records, she made small changes to his files, nothing dramatic enough to be noticed immediately, but enough to create problems later. She altered dates on claims reports, changed dollar amounts by small increments, and even deleted some communications between Richard and clients. The sabotage was carefully planned to look like mistakes rather than deliberate acts. Elena knew that if Richard's work suddenly became terrible, it would be suspicious. But if his performance gradually declined, it would look like he was becoming careless and unreliable. The strategy worked perfectly. Within a month, Richard was dealing with increasingly frustrated clients who claimed their cases weren't being handled properly. Settlement amounts were wrong, paperwork was missing, and communication was spotty. "I don't understand what's happening," Richard complained to Elena during one of their meetings. "I've been doing this job for 7 years, and suddenly I'm making mistakes I've never made before." "Everyone goes through rough patches," Elena said sympathetically. "You've been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe you need a vacation." "Maybe," Richard said, but he looked worried. "I can't afford to mess up now, especially with the company looking to expand. Mr. Hartwell is counting on me." Elena nodded understandingly, all while knowing that she was the cause of his problems. "Is there anything I can do to help? I have experience in operations management. Maybe I could review some of your procedures, see if there's something that could be improved." Richard was desperate enough to accept her offer. Over the next week, Elena spent time in Richard's office, supposedly helping him organize his workflow. In reality, she was gathering more evidence of his embezzlement and learning the details of his daily routine. She also planted seeds of doubt about Amanda. "I've noticed that your secretary seems distracted lately," she mentioned casually. "Is everything okay with her?" "Amanda's been having some personal problems," Richard said defensively. "She's been stressed about her future with the company." "That's understandable," Elena replied. "It must be difficult for her working so closely with you. I imagine some people might get the wrong idea about your relationship." Richard's face went pale. "What do you mean?" "Nothing specific," Elena said quickly. "It's just that office relationships can be complicated. People talk, you know. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about." But Elena could see that Richard was very worried. The suggestion that people might be talking about his relationship with Amanda was exactly the kind of paranoia she wanted to plant in his mind. That evening, Elena watched from her car as Richard left the office. Instead of going home, he drove to a bar across town, the same bar where he used to meet Amanda for their secret rendezvous. Elena followed at a distance, parking where she could observe without being seen. Richard sat alone at the bar for over an hour, drinking and checking his phone repeatedly. Amanda never showed up, but Elena could see that he was expecting her. The relationship was deteriorating exactly as Elena had planned. The next day, Elena put the final phase of her infiltration plan into action. She scheduled a meeting with Mr. Hartwell, ostensibly to discuss increasing her investment in the company. "I've been reviewing the operations," she told him, "and I'm impressed with most of what I've seen. However, I have some concerns about the claims department." Mr. Hartwell looked surprised. "Concerns? Richard has been one of our most reliable employees." "I'm sure he has been," Elena said carefully. "But I've noticed some irregularities in his recent work. Missing documentation, incorrect settlement amounts, communication gaps with clients. I'm wondering if he might be overwhelmed with his current workload." Elena provided Mr. Hartwell with a detailed report of the problems she had observed, problems she had created herself. She presented the information professionally, expressing concern for Richard's well-being rather than making accusations. "I'm not suggesting that Richard is incompetent," she concluded. "I think he's a good employee who might benefit from additional support or training. But if I'm going to increase my investment, I need to be confident that all departments are running smoothly." Mr. Hartwell thanked Elena for her report and promised to look into the situation. Elena knew that once he started investigating, he would find the evidence she had planted. Richard's carefully constructed professional reputation was about to crumble. As she left Mr. Hartwell's office, Elena felt a surge of satisfaction. She had successfully infiltrated Richard's professional life, destroyed his personal relationship, and positioned herself to bring down his entire world. The man who had tried to kill her for money was about to lose everything that mattered to him. But Elena wasn't finished yet. She had one more surprise in store for Richard, one that would complete her revenge in the most satisfying way possible. The investigation into Richard's work performance began immediately. Mr. Hartwell, motivated by Elena's concerns and his own desire to protect his company, launched a comprehensive review of the claims department. What he found was worse than Elena had led him to believe. The evidence of Richard's embezzlement was overwhelming once someone started looking for it. The altered settlement amounts, the missing documentation, the unauthorized payouts, it all pointed to systematic theft over a period of years. Elena's sabotage had simply made the existing crimes more visible. "I can't believe I missed this," Mr. Hartwell said to Elena during a private meeting. "Richard has been stealing from us for years. The total amount is close to $200,000. Elena maintained her expression of shock and concern. I'm so sorry. I know how much you trusted him. He's been like a son to me, Mr. Hartwell said, his voice heavy with disappointment. I gave him opportunities, promoted him, relied on him. And this is how he repays me. The confrontation with Richard took place the following morning. Elena made sure to be in her office when security escorted him to Mr. Hartwell's office. She watched through her window as Richard walked past, his face pale and confused. The meeting lasted for 2 hours. Elena could hear raised voices, denials, and eventually silence. When Richard emerged, he looked like a broken man. His face was ashen, his shoulders slumped, and his hands were shaking. Elena stepped out of her office as he walked past. Richard? Are you okay? He looked at her with eyes full of desperation and fear. They're saying I stole money. They have evidence, but I swear I didn't. I mean, I only took small amounts and I was planning to pay it back. The partial confession was exactly what Elena had hoped for. Richard was so panicked that he was admitting to crimes without realizing it. Oh my God, Elena said, her voice full of sympathy. What are you going to do? I don't know, Richard said. They're giving me until tomorrow to resign, or they'll call the police. My career is over. Everything I've worked for is gone. Elena watched as Richard gathered his personal belongings from his office. 7 years of work reduced to a cardboard box. She felt no pity for him, only satisfaction that justice was finally being served. But Richard's professional destruction was just the beginning. Elena had made sure that his personal life would crumble at the same time. Amanda had been watching Richard's downfall with growing alarm. She knew that if Richard went down, he might take her with him. She had been helping him steal from the company, and if he decided to confess everything, she would be facing criminal charges as well. Elena had been counting on Amanda's self-preservation instincts. She had planted evidence suggesting that Richard was planning to blame everything on Amanda, making her the scapegoat for his crimes. Anonymous tips about Amanda's involvement in the embezzlement were sent to company management, along with doctored documents that made it look like Amanda was the mastermind behind the scheme. When Amanda realized that she was being set up, she did exactly what Elena had hoped she would do. She turned against Richard completely. I'm not going down for this, Amanda told Richard during their final confrontation. Elena had positioned herself where she could overhear their conversation, and she recorded every word. You're the one who came up with the plan to steal from the company, Amanda continued. You're the one who said we needed money to start our new life together. And you're the one who killed your wife for the insurance money. Keep your voice down, Richard hissed. Do you want everyone to know? I don't care anymore, Amanda shot back. You used me, Richard. You made me help you steal, you made me help you commit murder, and now you're trying to pin everything on me. Well, I'm not going to let that happen. Elena could hardly believe what she was hearing. Amanda was confessing to helping with the murder plot, and she was doing it where Elena could record every word. If you try to blame me for the embezzlement, Amanda continued, I'll tell everyone what really happened to your wife. I'll tell them how you planned her death, how you loosened her safety harness, how you pushed her out of that helicopter. I'll tell them everything. Richard's face went white. You wouldn't dare. Try me, Amanda said. I have nothing left to lose. You've destroyed my life, my career, my future. The least I can do is make sure you go down with me. The recording Elena had captured was perfect. It contained confessions to both embezzlement and murder, spoken by the two people who had committed the crimes. It was exactly the evidence she needed to ensure that Richard would face justice for what he had done to her. But Elena wasn't ready to turn the recording over to the police yet. She wanted to savor Richard's complete destruction first. She wanted to watch him lose everything: his job, his money, his freedom, and his future. Over the next few days, Elena watched as Richard's world collapsed around him. He was fired from his job and blacklisted from the insurance industry. The insurance company refused to pay out on Sophia's policy, citing suspicious circumstances and ongoing investigations. His savings were frozen pending a criminal investigation, and he couldn't find another job. Amanda, meanwhile, had disappeared. She had cleaned out her apartment and left town, probably hoping to avoid criminal charges. But Elena had made sure that the police would find her eventually. She had provided anonymous tips about Amanda's whereabouts and her involvement in both the embezzlement and the murder plot. Richard was alone, broke, and desperate. He had lost everything he had gained from killing his wife, and he was facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. Elena had successfully destroyed him, but she still had one more surprise to deliver. She wanted Richard to know who was responsible for his downfall. She wanted him to realize that his victim had survived, that she had returned to destroy him, and that every moment of his suffering was justice for what he had done to her. The final confrontation was coming, and Elena was ready to reveal herself as the architect of Richard's destruction. The man who had tried to kill her was about to learn that some people are much harder to kill than they appear. Elena chose the timing of her revelation carefully. She waited until Richard was at his lowest point, jobless, broke, and facing criminal charges. She wanted him to be completely powerless when he learned the truth about who had been orchestrating his downfall. The confrontation took place in Richard's apartment, the same apartment where he had celebrated Elena's death with Amanda just months earlier. Elena had obtained a key through her private investigator contacts, and she let herself in while Richard was out desperately searching for employment. She sat in his living room, waiting in the same chair where she had watched him kiss Amanda the night of her funeral. The irony was not lost on her. When Richard returned home, he was carrying a stack of rejection letters from potential employers. His face was gaunt, his clothes were wrinkled, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. The confident, successful man who had pushed her from the helicopter was gone, replaced by a broken shell of a person. "Hello, Richard," Elena said calmly. Richard jumped, dropping his letters. "What are you doing here? How did you get in?" "Sit down," Elena said, her voice cold and commanding. "We have a lot to discuss." "I'm calling the police," Richard said, reaching for his phone. "Go ahead," Elena replied. "I'm sure they'd be very interested in hearing the recording I have of you and Amanda discussing how you murdered your wife." Richard's hand froze. "What are you talking about?" Elena pressed play on her phone and Richard's voice filled the room. "You're the one who killed your wife for the insurance money? How you planned her death, how you loosened her safety harness, how you pushed her out of that helicopter." The color drained from Richard's face. "Where did you get that?" "I was there when you and Amanda had your little argument," Elena said. "I've been there for everything, Richard. Watching you, documenting your crimes, destroying your life piece by piece." "Who are you?" Richard asked, though Elena could see the recognition beginning to dawn in his eyes. Elena stood up slowly, moving closer to him. "Look at me, Richard. Look closely. Don't you recognize your own wife?" Richard's legs gave out and he collapsed into a chair. "That's impossible. Sophia is dead. She died in the hospital. I went to her funeral." "You went to an empty casket," Elena said. "I've been alive this whole time, planning your destruction. Every problem you've had, every mistake you've made, every relationship you've lost, it was all me." "But how? The helicopter. You fell?" "I survived," Elena said simply. "The tree broke my fall. I was hurt but I lived. And while I was recovering, I realized something important. I didn't want to be Sofia Martinez anymore. She was weak, trusting, naive. She believed in love and marriage and happily ever after. She's dead, Richard. You killed her when you pushed her from that helicopter." Richard was hyperventilating, his face pale and sweaty. "This can't be happening. You're supposed to be dead." "I am dead," Elena said. "Sofia Martinez is dead. I'm Elena Rodriguez now, and I'm a very wealthy, very powerful woman. Powerful enough to destroy you completely." She pulled out a folder and dropped it on the coffee table. "This contains all the evidence of your embezzlement, your affair with Amanda, and your plan to murder me. It also contains the recording of your confession. I could turn this over to the police right now, and you'd spend the rest of your life in prison." Richard stared at the folder, his hands shaking. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand what you've lost," Elena said. "You killed your wife for $2 million in insurance money. Money you'll never see. You threw away a marriage with a woman who loved you, supported you, worked extra shifts to pay for your education. You destroyed your career, your reputation, your future. And for what? A secretary who ran away the moment things got difficult." "Sophia, please." "My name is Elena," she said sharply. "Sofia Martinez died in that helicopter. You made sure of that." Richard broke down completely, sobbing into his hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Amanda, she pushed me to do it. She said we'd never be happy unless I was dead," Elena finished. "Yes, I heard that part of your confession too. Please don't turn me in," Richard begged. "I'll do anything. I'll give you everything I have." Elena laughed, a sound without warmth. "You don't have anything, Richard. That's the point. I've already taken everything from you. Your job, your money, your girlfriend, your future. There's nothing left. Then why are you here? Why tell me all this?" "Because I wanted you to know," Elena said. I wanted you to understand that your victim didn't just disappear. She came back and she destroyed you completely. Every moment of suffering you've experienced in the past few months, that was justice. Elena walked to the window, looking out at the city where she had built her new life. I'm going to give you a choice, Richard. I can turn this evidence over to the police right now, and you'll spend the next 20 years in prison for embezzlement and attempted murder. Or what? Or you can disappear. Leave town tonight. Never come back. Change your name, start over somewhere else. Live the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if today is the day I decide to turn you in. Richard looked up at her with desperate hope. You'd let me go? I'm not letting you go, Elena said. I'm giving you the same choice you gave me when you pushed me from that helicopter. You can take your chances with gravity or you can fight to survive. The difference is I'm not trying to kill you. I'm just making sure you live with the consequences of what you did. Richard nodded frantically. Yes, okay. I'll leave. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. Good, Elena said. Because if I ever do see you again, if you ever try to contact me or anyone from your old life, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. And prison is not kind to men who try to murder their wives. She moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Richard? The insurance company has been asking questions about my death. They're suspicious about the circumstances. If they ever find out I'm alive, they'll want to know why I faked my death. I'll have to tell them the truth about what really happened in that helicopter. The threat was clear. If Richard ever tried to expose her, she would expose him right back. And her story that she had faked her death to escape an abusive husband who had tried to kill her would be much more sympathetic than his. Elena left Richard's apartment for the last time, knowing she would never see him again. He would disappear, probably change his name, and spend the rest of his life in fear. It wasn't the same as justice, but it was better than he deserved. The next morning, Elena submitted her final report to the police. The report contained all the evidence of Richard's embezzlement, but it made no mention of the murder plot or her true identity. She told them that Richard had fled town, leaving behind evidence of his crimes. She also submitted a separate report to the insurance company, detailing Richard's financial crimes and suggesting that they investigate the circumstances of his wife's death more thoroughly. She knew that eventually they would discover the truth about the helicopter incident, but by then Richard would be long gone. Elena Rodriguez had successfully destroyed Richard Martinez, but her revenge was still not complete. She had one more phase of her plan to execute, building a new life that would be everything Sofia Martinez's life had never been. 6 months after Richard's disappearance, Elena Rodriguez was a different person entirely. She had used her 30% stake in Hartwell Insurance as a stepping stone to build a business empire that spanned multiple industries. The scared, trusting woman who had once worked extra shifts to support her husband was gone, replaced by a shrewd, powerful businesswoman who commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Elena had purchased the remaining 70% of Hartwell Insurance when Mr. Hartwell decided to retire early, citing the stress of Richard's betrayal. She now owned the entire company, employing over 200 people and managing millions of dollars in assets. But that was just the beginning. She had used her success at Hartwell as collateral to secure loans for other ventures. She purchased a chain of medical clinics, invested in real estate developments, and even bought a small hospital. Everything she touched seemed to turn to gold, and her reputation as a savvy investor spread throughout the business community. The transformation wasn't just professional. Elena had become beautiful in a way that Sofia had never been, not just physically, but with the confidence and power that came from controlling her own destiny. She wore expensive clothes, drove luxury cars, and lived in a penthouse apartment that offered a view of the entire city. But the most satisfying part of her transformation was the respect she commanded. People listened when she spoke, deferred to her judgment, and sought her approval. She was no longer the woman who had been pushed around, taken advantage of, and ultimately betrayed. She was the woman who did the pushing now. Elena was reviewing acquisition reports in her office when her assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Rodriguez? There's a woman here to see you. She says it's about your late husband." Elena looked up, curious. Very few people knew about her supposed deceased husband, and she had been careful to keep that part of her cover story vague. "Send her in," Elena said. The woman who entered was in her 50s, well-dressed, with intelligent eyes and a confident bearing. She introduced herself as Detective Sarah Chin from the Miami Police Department. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm investigating a case involving a man named Richard Martinez. I believe you may have known him through your business dealings." Elena's heart rate increased, but she kept her expression calm. "The name sounds familiar. He worked for Hartwell Insurance before I acquired the company, didn't he? That's right, Detective Chin said. He disappeared about 6 months ago, just before charges were filed against him for embezzlement. We've been tracking his movements, trying to locate him. I'm afraid I can't help you, Elena said. I only dealt with him briefly during my acquisition of the company. He was gone before I had a chance to get to know him well. Detective Chin nodded, but her eyes remained sharp. The interesting thing is, we found evidence that someone had been systematically sabotaging his work in the weeks before his disappearance. Computer records were altered, files were changed, correspondence was deleted. It was a very sophisticated operation. Elena maintained her composure, but she could feel the detective's scrutiny. That's unfortunate. Corporate sabotage is a serious crime. Indeed it is, Detective Chin agreed. We also found evidence that someone had been conducting psychological warfare against him: anonymous photos, mysterious gifts, threats. Someone wanted Richard Martinez to suffer before he disappeared. It sounds like he had enemies, Elena said. I'm not surprised, given his criminal activities. Detective Chin leaned forward slightly. The thing is, Ms. Rodriguez, we've been investigating Richard's background, and we discovered something interesting. He was married to a woman named Sofia Martinez, who died in a helicopter accident about a year ago. Elena's blood ran cold, but she forced herself to remain calm. I'm sorry to hear that. Losing a spouse is always tragic. The insurance company has been investigating that accident, Detective Chin continued. They found some irregularities in the claim, and they're starting to believe that Richard may have been involved in his wife's death. That's horrible, Elena said. Do you think he killed her? We're starting to think so, Detective Chin said. But here's the interesting part: we can't find Sofia Martinez's body. The funeral had a closed casket, and when we got a court order to exhume the grave, we found it was empty. Elena felt her heart pounding, but she kept her voice steady. What does that mean? It means either Richard moved the body to hide evidence, or Sofia Martinez isn't actually dead, Detective Chin said. And if she's not dead, then she's the most likely person to have orchestrated Richard's downfall. The two women stared at each other for a long moment. Elena could see that Detective Chin suspected the truth, but she also knew that the detective had no proof. That's a fascinating theory, Elena said finally. But I'm not sure how it relates to me. Maybe it doesn't, Detective Chin said, standing up. But I have a feeling we'll be seeing each other again, Ms. Rodriguez. I have a talent for solving puzzles, and this one is very interesting. After the detective left, Elena sat in her office, thinking about what had just happened. She had always known that someday someone might figure out the truth about her identity. But she had also known that proving it would be nearly impossible. Elena Rodriguez had a completely fabricated but legally documented history. She had a social security number, a driver's license, bank accounts, and a business empire. Sofia Martinez, on the other hand, was officially dead. Even if Detective Chin suspected the truth, she would have a difficult time proving that Elena and Sofia were the same person. More importantly, Elena had committed no crimes. She had faked her death to escape an abusive husband who had tried to kill her, and she had used legal business tactics to destroy him. Richard, meanwhile, was guilty of embezzlement and attempted murder. Even if the truth came out, public sympathy would be on Elena's side. Elena looked out her office window at the city below. She had built an empire from nothing, created a new identity, and achieved a level of success that Sofia Martinez never could have imagined. She was wealthy, powerful, and respected. Most importantly, she was free. Richard Martinez was gone, probably hiding in some distant city, living in poverty and fear. Amanda had disappeared as well, and Elena had no doubt that she was facing her own form of justice. The two people who had tried to destroy her were now destroyed themselves. Elena picked up her phone and dialed Nicole's number. It's time to celebrate, she said when her friend answered. I think our mission is complete. Are you sure? Nicole asked. No regrets about letting Richard go? No regrets, Elena said. He's living with the consequences of his actions every day. That's better than prison. It's a life sentence of fear and guilt. That evening, Elena stood on the balcony of her penthouse, looking out at the city lights. She thought about the woman she had been, Sofia Martinez, the trusting wife who had worked extra shifts to support her husband's dreams. That woman was gone, killed not by the fall from the helicopter, but by the betrayal that had preceded it. Elena Rodriguez was a different person, entirely stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. She had taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and transformed it into the foundation of a new life. She had survived Richard's attempt to kill her, and she had thrived. She had built a business empire, created a new identity, and achieved a level of success that most people could only dream of. She had taken control of her own destiny and made sure that no one would ever be able to hurt her again. The fall from the helicopter had been meant to end her life. Instead, it had been the beginning of something much more powerful. Elena Rodriguez had risen from the ashes of Sofia Martinez's death, and she was never going back. As she watched the city lights twinkle below, Elena smiled. She had everything she had ever wanted: wealth, power, respect, and most importantly, freedom. Richard Martinez had tried to destroy her, but instead, he had created something far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Elena Rodriguez was no longer a victim. She was a survivor, a conqueror, and a force to be reckoned with. The woman who had fallen from the helicopter was dead, but the woman who had risen from that fall was unstoppable. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Mr. Hartwell, calling to congratulate her on her latest acquisition. "Elena, I just heard about the hospital purchase." "Congratulations. You're building quite an empire." "Thank you," Elena said. "I learned from the best. You taught me that success comes from understanding people, their motivations, their weaknesses, their fears." "That's true," Mr. Hartwell agreed. "Though I have to say you've taken those lessons further than I ever did. You have a gift for reading people." After ending the call, Elena returned to her contemplation of the city. She thought about all the lives she was now responsible for: her employees, her clients, the patients in her medical facilities. She had the power to help people, to make a positive difference in the world. That was perhaps the most satisfying part of her transformation. Sofia Martinez had wanted to help people as a nurse, but she had been limited by circumstances and other people's expectations. Elena Rodriguez could help people on a much larger scale. She could create jobs, provide medical care, and build something lasting and meaningful. 6 months later, Elena received a call from Detective Chin. Richard Martinez had been found not by the police, but by a private investigator hired by one of his former victims. He was living under an assumed name in a small town in Oregon, working at a gas station and living in a trailer park. "We're bringing him back to face charges," Detective Chin said. "Embezzlement, insurance fraud, and attempted murder. He's looking at 25 to life." "I'm glad justice will be served," Elena said, and she meant it. She had given Richard a chance to disappear and start over, but he had apparently been unable to resist committing new crimes. Some people never learned. "There's something else," Detective Chin said. "He's been telling anyone who will listen that his wife is still alive. He claims she faked her death and framed him. Of course, no one believes him. He's been saying a lot of crazy things since his arrest." Elena felt a moment of unease, but then she remembered that Richard had no proof of his claims. Even if he told the truth, who would believe a desperate criminal trying to escape justice? "That's unfortunate," Elena said. "Grief can make people say strange things." After the call ended, Elena made a decision. It was time to close this chapter of her life completely. She called her lawyer and began the process of legally changing her name from Elena Rodriguez to Elena Rodriguez Hartwell, honoring the man who had given her the opportunity to build her empire. She also established a charitable foundation in Sofia Martinez's name, dedicated to helping women escape domestic violence. The foundation would provide resources, shelter, and support for women in situations similar to what Sofia had faced. It would be her way of honoring the woman she had been while celebrating the woman she had become. 5 years after the helicopter incident, Elena Rodriguez Hartwell was featured on the cover of Business Week magazine as one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. Her business empire had grown to include hospitals, insurance companies, real estate developments, and technology firms. She employed over 2,000 people and was worth an estimated $50 million. The article detailed her incredible rise from a grieving widow to a business titan, but it made no mention of her previous identity. Elena had successfully buried Sofia Martinez so deeply that even the most thorough investigation couldn't uncover the truth. Richard Martinez, meanwhile, was serving a life sentence in state prison. He had been convicted on all charges, and his claims about his wife being alive had been dismissed as the desperate lies of a guilty man. Amanda had been found and convicted as well, receiving a 15-year sentence for her role in the crimes. Elena never visited Richard in prison, never sent a letter, never acknowledged his existence in any way. As far as she was concerned, he was already dead, killed by his own greed and betrayal just as surely as he had tried to kill her. On the 10th anniversary of her death, Elena stood in the cemetery where Sofia Martinez was supposedly buried. The headstone was real, marking the death of the woman she had been. Fresh flowers had been placed there recently, probably by some of Sophia's former colleagues from the hospital who still remembered her kindness. Elena placed her own flowers on the grave, saying goodbye to the woman she had been one final time. Sophia Martinez had been a good person, loving, trusting, generous to a fault. She had deserved better than Richard's betrayal, but her death had given birth to something extraordinary. Elena Rodriguez Hartwell was everything Sophia Martinez had never been allowed to be. She was powerful, independent, and in control of her own destiny. She had built an empire from the ashes of her former life, and she had done it by being smarter, stronger, and more determined than anyone who had tried to destroy her. As she walked away from the cemetery, Elena felt a sense of peace she had never experienced before. The woman who had fallen from the helicopter was finally at rest, and the woman who had risen from that fall was ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. Elena Rodriguez Hartwell was no longer running from her past or seeking revenge for old wounds. She was building a future for herself, for her employees, and for all the women who would benefit from the foundation she had created in Sophia's name. The fall that was supposed to end her life had instead given her the chance to live it on her own terms. And she intended to make the most of every moment.